अंग्रेज अपना लगान और न्यूज लॉन्ड्री अपना हफ्ता कभी नहीं छोड़ते. Welcome to the second episode of the year 2025 of Newslaundry Hafta, and we promise we will try to make it a little more upbeat because we have got a lot of feedback that the first 2025 Hafta episode was so full of pessimism that people were a little concerned about all of us.
That's because I wasn't there in it.
Yeah, of course,
it was just me, Abhinandan, Raman sir, I think.
The ray of optimistic
quite
hope
bleak. Yeah.
wasn't here. But let me first ask all of you to join our campaign, which is Fight to Breathe. I'm sure you've seen Newslaundry do a lot of stories around that. We are putting out exclusive investigations. We are putting out general reports. We are encouraging you to file RTIs. Here's a QR code. Scan the QR code and see how you can get involved. We're going to be running this through the year because enough poison has been breathed by our lungs and our children and everybody. We have to say, as Tom Cruise said in that film, which I forget the name of, sometime in life you got to say, what the fuck? So we've said, this is it. What the fuck? We cannot take this shit anymore.
Is that a Tom Cruise dialogue?
Yeah, it was one of his...
it's from Risky Business.
Risky Business. See, there we go. Right, so...
I just know Show Me the Money.
Yeah, no, that was... that isn't even Tom Cruise.
Jerry Maguire.
Jerry Maguire. I mean, he's kind of repeating
That's much later, yeah, correct. So, Fight to Breathe on Clean Air. Scan, you'll know the details. Now, let me introduce our panel. And we have an extremely accomplished panel today with one exception. I'm just BA pass, but we have two professors, a writer of the Green Book, which I must plug first, by Amitava Kumar. So let us introduce Amitava Kumar and welcome to our studio. I'm sure many of you already know him.
Thank you, boss.
Amitava,
Thank you. Thank you. It's great being here, especially next to Manisha.
All right. So most of our audience probably already know who Amitava is, but I should do the formal introduction. He's an Indian author, a journalist. He's known for his insightful exploration of personal and cultural narratives. He serves as the Helen D. Lockwood Professor of English at a college that starts with V, which I'll get the pronunciation wrong of. So
Vassar College.
Vassar College. He, writes novels, including My Beloved Life, which explores a fictional life of 20th century India and immigrant Montana, recognized as a notable book of the year by the New York Times. His writing has appeared in The New Yorker, Harper's Magazine, The Nation. And Kumar's latest book is called The Green Book. Here it is. The link is in the show notes. You can click there and also order it. It's an exploration of his creative process and the importance of journaling for self-discovery. It's a final volume in a trilogy that includes the Blue Book and the Yellow Book. Blue, yellow, green. Why do you pick these colors?
यूं ही
Blue
से start हुआ, फिर देखा मैंने किसी के class में कि he had offered 2 journals to his students. One was blue, to write their own thoughts. One was yellow, to write down other people's thoughts. ये भैया नीचे ने ऐसा कहा या रूसो ने कहा. So I thought, yaar, ye dono rang. So I thought I'd do the yellow. And then I thought, well, when you mix blue and yellow, you get green. So climate change, vagara. We'll come to that when we discuss the poisoned air and etc.
Yes, we will. Then also joining us in our studio is Manisha Pande, who's much better this week. She was miserably unwell last week.
Yeah.
Partly to blame because of the air. So fix it, man. Otherwise, she's going to keep falling ill. So then joining us very generously from Michigan, where it is some unearthly hour in the winter of US, is Professor Joyojeet Pal. Thank you, Joyojeet.
Great to be here.
Appreciate you joining us. Many of you already know him. He's been on Hafta before. He's Associate Professor at the University of Michigan's School of Information. His background in journalism before pursuing his academic career. And he also writes for Newslaundry. And he has done some very significant research projects. And of course, he is also the designer and the host of the conference, the social media conference that happens at Michigan every year. And Jayashree from Chennai, who was telling us about how so much of mist and fog in Chennai last week. And I have got
mock me, but I was...
I have got a lot of good feedback
so.
on the uncle joke I cracked that, that must be steam from the idlis. And no one said that was a very North Indian Piroki.
When you say lots of feedback, you mean like one person. Like your mother will tell you what a great joke.
Two, a lovely joke, beta. Too good. So we will get to the book, but let's quickly go to the headlines and we'll get into the discussion. Jayashree, can you give us the headlines for the week?
Yes, so assembly elections in Delhi have been announced. They'll take place on February 5th, and the Model Code of Conduct has now come into force. Chief Election Commissioner has addressed concerns about alleged wrongful additions and deletions in electoral rolls. He also says the High Courts and Supreme Courts have ruled EVMs are secure and foolproof. Additionally, the Election Commission has directed Delhi's Chief Electoral Officer to probe an AAP complaint. The AAP has said Parvesh Verma, who is a BJP candidate, has violated the Model Code of Conduct.
And also, please check out Sumeda's report.
Yeah.
It's an investigation that took a long time. It doesn't happen in 3 days. It takes months on the voter
Deletions and
deletion and
additions.
addition in Chandni Chowk.
Yeah.
Extremely worrying.
All 4 parts of that series is out, so you must read it on our website.
Yes, continuing with Delhi Assembly election updates, the district election officer has flagged concerns about political interference. He claimed the AAP has attempted to exert pressure on him, and I quote. And there was a standoff between members of the AAP and the Delhi police after Sanjay Singh and Saurabh Bharadwaj were stopped from entering the Chief Minister's official residence in the national capital.
In search of the
Golden Commode.
golden commode which the BJP claims existed, they said, we want to see the golden commode. But yeah, apparently it doesn't
Hilarious.
exist.
Yes, then BJP leader Ramesh Biduri has raised another controversy. He made some comments over the name of Delhi Chief Minister Atishi. He is the man who said the roads in Delhi will be like Priyanka Gandhi Vadra's cheeks. And then he apologized over it.
Yeah.
The body of journalist Mukesh Chandrakar, who freelanced with several media houses and ran a YouTube channel, was found inside a septic tank on Friday. This is a day after he went missing in Chhattisgarh's Bijapur. He used to frequently investigate and report on corruption, tribal rights, and insurgent violence. Monday was a tumultuous day for Prashant Kishore. He is fasting unto death in solidarity with BPSC students in Bihar. He was arrested, then he was jailed after he refused to sign conditions of a bail agreement. Then he was released on unconditional bail. Then he was hospitalized after suffering from dehydration and a throat infection.
Okay.
Very important updates. In my state, the DMK has been staging protests across all 39 of its district headquarters. This is after Governor R.N. Ravi decided to walk out of the state assembly. He refused to deliver his customary address, which is scheduled to take place on the first day of the first session of every year in the House. I should add, this happened last year. It happened the year before that. So it's not shocking.
Yeah, this is an annual event.
Every single year, he expresses great shock and concern that the anthem is not played as soon as he enters. And then somebody will tell him, no, but we play the anthem at the end. And we've been doing this since the 1970s.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard of this controversy
Yes.
every year.
This is deja vu. And then again, he'll be like, oh my God, how are you not playing it? And then he'll leave. So, anyway. Farmer leader Jagjit Singh Daliwal, who has been on a hunger strike since November 26th, met with a high-power committee formed by the Supreme Court on Monday. However, he has refused medical aid. In tragic news, at least 6 devotees lost their lives. Several others were injured in a stampede at the Tirumala temple in Tirupati. They had gathered to stand in queues for special darshan tickets.
Yeah, and I think 25 lakh has been announced to each kin.
Yeah, and it was a complete breakdown of crowd control.
And there have been a few suspensions of the police personnel over there as well.
Yes. In Chhattisgarh, at least 8 security personnel from the district reserve guard and a driver were killed on Monday when their vehicle was attacked by suspected Maoists. A day before, at least 4 suspected Maoists were killed in a gunfight.
Right.
In news from America, Donald Trump held an hour-long press conference. He made several fantastical claims. He said the US wants to acquire the Panama Canal, Greenland, and Canada. He normalized the Capitol Hill riots of 2020. He threatened his NATO allies. And he escalated threats against Hamas.
And I think it is his most unhinged press conference yet. I watched the whole thing. It's a must watch.
Yes. Under growing pressure from his own party, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Monday announced he intended to resign, but he will hold the post until his successor is appointed. And finally, Meta has announced significant changes to its content moderation policies, including the termination of its fact-checking partnerships and the removal of restrictions on discussions about immigration, gender identity, and gender. And those are the headlines.
So this is something that Joyojeet has a significant expertise in, which we would like to pick his brain to try to figure out the implications of this. But let me start right here in the studio. Amitav, the Green Book is the importance of journaling your life. Is that right?
Yeah.
And why do you think that's important?
Just to have a narrative about what's happening around you.
Okay.
Because if you think about, for example, fake news, which we are going to also address, when the pandemic started, people said that WHO said that there was also an infodemic. Okay? The spread of fake news or the spread of misinformation was commensurate with the spread of the virus. तो आपको ये भी पता नहीं कि आज कौन सा falsehood हुआ, कल क्या deliver किया, तीसरे दिन क्या हुआ. So just to keep track of what is happening in our landscape and being altered. The other thing, at least, I don't know whether Joyojeet also had that experience, but when there would be a lynching, let's say Muhammad Akhlaq ki, and then a week later it would be someone else, and then some weeks later it was Pehlu Khan, and then it was, let's say, Muhammad Ansari in Jharkhand. I certainly was losing count of ki bhaiya kahan kya ho raha hai.
Right.
So journaling and then thinking about how to keep an account of taki ye bhi janu ki bhai who is being sacrificed on this altar of the rise of right-wing bigotry. So just to keep an account, I began to myself keep a little journal about these killings.
Right.
Joyojeet might also, again, and I don't know about you guys, but there was a book called Citizen by a black writer, Claudia Rankine in America. Meri volume mein, across from her poem which said, because white men cannot police their imagination, black men are dying, there was 3 names of the people who had been killed that year. When I bought the book for my daughter, the names had increased by several more. And I thought, here was an example again, where it was, the book itself became a live memorial ki hamari society mein ho kya raha. So I'm a great advocate of beginning to treat everything we do here in terms of either keeping our own writing, but also of what we are publishing as a record of the daily atrocities.
Right. So when you say an observer's notebook, I read the blurb. It says the importance of journaling, but this is explaining the importance of journaling through your life's examples, or this is your journal being published as a book as well? There's a bit of that. It's a bit both.
Both.
And your journal would be more about you. Like, for example, I don't know whether you guys have read M and the Big Whom, Jerry Pinto's. I think it's one of the finest books by an Indian author I have ever read. It's a
wonderful book, yes.
And it is a kind of a journal of, his life with his mother.
Yes.
And it's very personal.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the examples you gave are more political. It's like more public-facing information.
Yes.
What is your book about?
My father died last year. Well, now we are in 2025. So in 23 March. And I thought he wanted to be cremated in Manikarnika. So we took his body from Patna there. And then everything happened so fast कि मुझे लगा कि भैया क्या हुआ. I didn't even have a way to figure out this grief. तो मैंने सोचा कि let me go back. So 3 महीने बाद I returned and I went up to Dev Prayag, for example, and started a journey down to the Doab, to down there, straight up to Calcutta and Sundarbans. So I'm just reporting on one hand, what happened that day, what was my father like, what did he want, what was our relationship, vagara vagara. But I'm also observing what is happening around me. So ab jaise ki Joshimath mein, because of the hydroelectric projects, the towns are sinking, and the houses are being abandoned. If there's landslides, by the time you come to Varanasi, pani ki halat kya hai? What's the level of pollution? What's the, blah, blah, blah. Yahan par aap jab aate hain Sundarbans mein, the levels of the water are rising, tiger widows ki kya sthiti hai. To I'm describing my own account of travel and my own memories, but I'm also presenting an account of what's happening around me, so that it's not just a self-indulgent memoir, but it is also a report on our society.
I see. Interesting concept. Okay.
You should have read the damn book first.
I know, I should have. Actually, no, that was supposed to be Anand's job, because he was supposed to do an interview with you, but his law exam is just not finishing, and I just wish his law exam would finish so he could come and join us on Hafta. And he was so excited to interview because he apparently is a great admirer of your writing.
Yeah, he's a huge fan of
He's
your
a big
work.
fan of yours, and he was very excited.
I'm a fan only of Newslaundry and of Manisha Pande in particular.
Thank you.
Very good.
But we should nevertheless have the interview done even via Zoom.
Kabhi hoga.
Via Zoom, even.
Let's talk to Joyojeet also about something that can I also ask him a question?
Please, go ahead.
Boss, I wrote a book called A Time Outside This Time. It's a novel, but I began that novel with this idea of noting down falsehoods at the beginning of the first Trump presidency. Because Obama, as he was leaving office, gave an interview to the New York Times, where he said that his daughter had been reading Hemingway and Hemingway's Movable Feast. She liked the line, "Write the truest sentence you know." ठीक है? तो मैंने सोचा कि भैया अब तो the liar has come into office. Let me write down the one lie of the day every day. So that became my path to a novel where I report on just a chapter is called The Velocity of Lies, just reporting on the mistruths. And one thing I found, by the way, in a study done by the MIT people was that bots spread fake news, let's say on Twitter, but humans spread it 6 times more. Have you come across that data, Joyojeet?
I don't know this specific thing, but what is definitely true is that, firstly, when you say fake news, that has a specific meaning. So when you say misinformation, that's a spectrum of things.
Yeah.
When we say fake news, a technical understanding of that is something that pretends to be visually news. So, it has something like breaking news or fake CNN, so something like that, right? The real problem is innuendo is spread much faster by humans.
Yes.
And it is me saying, okay, is Abhinandan a communist? And that is a question mark behind that. So even though I have not explicitly said something which is a known falsehood, the fact that I've put it out there in the public makes it move in a certain way. So that becomes more of the problem. What you see has happened, in fact, even with the thing that's just gone down with Meta, is this idea that we have misinformation and community notes will take care of it. The community will take care of it. But what happens when your community is radicalized, or that the most radicalized people of the community decide that they are going to be the fact checkers? That then becomes a kind of self-propagating problem, which over time, now you even have the authorization of that community, which is saying, no, we checked this and clearly this is not false. So that obviously doesn't answer your specific question, but even in the Indian case, we've seen that there are people who are at a certain age here in the US, by the way, who would just be sitting and retweeting something which belonged to a certain segment of Indian social media content without necessarily thinking about what it says. My job is just, I'm retired, I'm going to wake up in the morning, I'm just going to go and aggressively retweet everything that's going on. Yeah. And then when you look at that account, it looks like, well, this must be a bot. But no, it turns out it's actually a real person. And so, which is more scary? That you can track?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm on a few groups with such real persons on WhatsApp who pay low. I'm like, dude, do they do nothing? And then I realize they actually don't do nothing. That's all they do.
They actually do nothing. And this is what they do.
The innuendo that you're talking about, one of the most high profile person who does this all the time, and I find it fascinating, is Elon Musk. He will retweet something interesting, exclamation mark.
Yes.
And what is interesting? Some accusation that someone has backed some pedophile or some of that is demonstrably false. He's not saying it's true. Is that right? That is something that should be looked at, and that's all. Or he'll just do a wild, he'll just put this one word and he'll retweet something that he does all the time. But, I want to get in, I want to go a little deeper into the whole abandoning fact checkers, etc. But before that, what you said, Amitav, on journaling, I just want to go around the panel a bit and then come back a little more about your book, and then we'll move full on into the fake news. Do Manisha, Jayashree, Joyojeet, have you guys been writing journals ever? I mean, since you were young or since you were...
As a child, I had multiple volumes, but I think I gave up journals once I hit college. I think also because my social life suddenly became far more active than when I was in school. So I was like, I don't have time for this anymore.
Joyojeet, do you write?
Yeah, so I was writing letters, emails on a regular basis to my children as a kind of a journal. So today this happened. This is the name of the person who took care of you and this and that. And I had this strange experience. My father, he passed away some years ago. And before he passed away, I flew to India because I live in the States to be with him. And by the time he was already bedridden, and as soon as I got there, I realized that he was lying next to this kind of speaker, which is a Wi-Fi speaker. And I immediately knew what music to play for him. And I immediately knew what movies he wanted to watch. It was almost like I knew who he was as a young man. And there was this moment, he was too weak to even to go to the bathrooms and stuff. So I was able to carry him in my arms with my hand behind his head. There was a moment when I suddenly realized that much as I know exactly who this person is, my children, as children of an immigrant, and my wife is American, have no idea of who I was as a young man. And then suddenly that kind of brings you into this existential panic over, well, I should journal my life more. And then at some point you say, well, who cares if I journal my life more? So it's all,
Right.
In the end, that's why my only journaling, so to say, was letters to my children. So
How about you, Manisha?
So as a kid, yes, because it was fashionable to, write Dear Diary. But then I would read it and I would get really embarrassed by my own thoughts and writing. And then I would tear them up and just say, what the fuck? I'm not writing again. So no, but I haven't written for a very long time now. But I want to start it. I think it's nice.
I think maybe social media is a poor substitute for what journaling was. Like same experience of mine when I see some of my writings from the time I was in my teens and my 20s, because one had a lot of time and one would write a lot. You realize, I think that for me, I think it's an imperative that one must do it because there is no way you can look at yourself objectively, right? You cannot put distance between yourself and yourself. The closest you can come to is put distance between yourself today and 20 years from now. And what you are today, you can journal, you can be completely honest. If you read it 5 years, 8 years, 10 years later, then you can see a little more objectively, that's who I was. And oh my God, the things that mattered, like really had 21-year-old me met 50-year-old me, I'd have slapped 21-year-old me so hard. You fucking whiny piece of shit. Get up and get on with it.
But based on what Joyojeet says, I've been wanting to do this project. I mean, so it's not journaling for myself, but in reverse, it's that I want compendiums of my parents, so I want to start this project. And I got this idea from someone I was talking to the other day, but I want to start interviewing my parents, like just not on things like, oh, what do you think of current affairs or like sort of big ticket events, but just in a very everyday sort of what they were like when they were my age or when they were much younger than me, because they never maintained journals. And I feel like, all of us are at that age where we're somewhere towards the end. And I want that chronicle to sort of exist. Like, I don't have children. I have no one to pass it down to or whatever. But I think it is important that something of those people remain in that form.
Pass it down to the world, Jayashree. But here's a question, Amitava. And, here's the contradiction within itself. When one writes with the understanding that someone else is going to read it, I believe one is not completely honest.
Yes.
They say that Google knows more about you than your best friend. Right? What you search for, what because that's just you. So isn't there an inherent contradiction in writing a journal?
Yes.
Which has to be published at some point, in which case it will not be a completely honest journal. And if it is a completely honest journal, it is only for yourself and no one else will ever read it. Do you think there's some merit to that?
I don't think it merits. I'm frankly much more concerned that even our partial truths or somewhat suppressed truths get some air and are preserved rather than vanish forever. For example, the other day in Mumbai, I asked a friend of mine who happens to be Muslim, Yaar, did you have a dream recently in which you are identifiably a Muslim? He said yes. ठीक है? उसने एक कहानी बताई जो मैंने लिख दिया, उससे से लिखवा लिया actually एक फोटो लेकर. And I'll tell that. But was he being objective? No, but I don't care. I want कि उसकी जो कहानी है ना, what he has experienced should be in some ways preserved by some writer like me and then made a part of a sort of a record. He said that he saw in his dream that he was on the roof of a house. It was not his own house, but it was just he used the phrase posh colony like the one he lives in. And then there was a group going around. He was standing on the roof. There was a group going around with a list of Muslim homes. ठीक है? और उसके रंगकर्मी दोस्त थे, wrote in Hindi, कि his theatre friends would say to him, would be looking at their phones, and he said that they were not unusually perturbed. They were there to help him, but they were not unusually perturbed. They would look at Insta Reels and laugh, or they were looking at YouTube videos, and then they would get alerts, and then they would say, run this way, you are safe, run this way. And he said, मैं भागता रहा, एक छत से दूसरी छत, और सोचता रहा मैं कितनी देर इस तरह से भागता रहूंगा. ठीक है? Now, I'm just going to keep that. I do not care whether it is objective or not. In fact, I believe in how subjective and partial it is, but it is an important record, personal, but in some ways it becomes a public document. कि भैया हमारे देश में हो क्या रहा है.
Right.
You know? तो I'm committed to that project. You know?
I see.
I don't care कि भैया, and I do not even mind being embarrassed. I found letters I had written to a woman 40 years ago when I was a student here at Delhi University. मैं तो जो मिला, so of course, it depressed me to be reading those letters. But I wrote to her. I said, 40 years later, a letter. I said, how stupid we were. Could you please, could I do a conversation with you on camera about what little we knew, how stupid we were? कितने मैं तुम्हें impress करने के लिए इधर-उधर authors के writings बेचता था. So, I've written about that too in the Green Book, because green is an unripe time, as Oscar Wilde says, a time of sickly thoughts. तो मैंने उसका भी चर्चा किया इसमें. You know, how to make public our embarrassments. I'm committed to that project.
On that self-awareness, I've said this before in Hafta, Salman Rushdie is one of my favorite authors. I think he's a brilliant author. Like he's clever, he is smart, he is wise, he's all those things. And he's a dick. And he is so aware that he is a dick that when you read that Joseph Anton, he is so aware of his own self-indulgence, selfishness. It is phenomenal that a man can be so aware that he's a dick. That I find it fascinating. He's very unself-conscious about it.
I don't think you appeal as a writer if you're not aware of your stupidities or weaknesses. I began to trust George Orwell, who, like me, was born near Motihari. He was born in a hut there after he wrote this essay about how he used to wet his bed, And then Manoj Vajpayee ने जब बताया कि वो भी उसकी भी वही आदत थी, तो मुझे लगा मैं इस शख्स से बात कर सकता हूँ. Because all our politicians, all our celebrities, all our actors have nothing ever to do, have no truck with honesty, are never revealing their weaknesses. All they are doing is in some ways bragging about their strengths, many of which are non-existent.
Right.
Amitav, can I just ask you one quick last question on journaling, which is that, a lot of people do it in a very personal way. You're not writing it for anyone to ever read and so on. But then there are cases where, after someone has passed or whatever, their journals are found, they are published.
Sure.
And those decisions are taken. Do you sometimes feel like there's a bit of a struggle with the ethics of that? Or is that just, a question of it's for the public good or whatever?
Yeah. My students always ask me in my journalism classes, जैसे कि if I assign them something, like go and talk to other people and ask them what is their most painful memory. The first question will be, is that ethical? और मुझे हमेशा लगता है यार, किसने तुम्हें इतने लोड कर दी? It's not that I want to promote an unethical society, but I want to actually get the work done first and then worry about it later.
Correct.
I always say to them, repeating what a friend of mine actually born in Michigan once said, that if journalism is the first draft of history, then a journal is the first draft of literature. So,
lovely.
So I want to promote that idea that you are going to be able to access some deeper emotion or some experience and be able to present a record if you journal. So I really liked what Joyojeet also said about the email part to his kids.
Right.
I am always aware. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. So actually, it's interesting that you mentioned this Prem Patra and all that, because that is very fascinating, because there's obviously, the poem that you wrote when you were 19, which would embarrass you, hopefully. But then there is also the opportunity that you might find it and find that it doesn't embarrass you. And then you try to seek what you were as a person then, that you wish you could find back, because there's a certain enthusiasm, a certain openness to the world, which comes with being that person who's presenting themselves. It's very different journal
sure.
than one. Yeah.
I like that.
Right.
Yeah.
I certainly liked the woman who I saw in those letters. You know what I'm saying? And that made me reach out because I thought, why was she so full of grace? And why was she so full of love? And why was I such an idiot? Also, I must tell you, though this is not significant, that I found a rejection letter, which is also mentioned in this book as well as in my novel.
As in professional rejection letter or thank you for your affection but not interested?
A professional rejection letter for my stupid poetry. It was from a lyric magazine, locally based, Chetan or Chetan Enclave, I can't remember now. So wo maine dal diya. It was so excoriating that I thought I should make that also a part of the public record. It said that these poems are without any value.
Right. So I just want to plug a Sena project that we would like our supporters, subscribers, viewers to back. As you know, we are a ad-free platform. We take absolutely no ads. We depend on you to support our journalism. So the Delhi polls will be conducted in less than a month. So please do contribute. Here's the QR code. There's a link in the show notes below. And also, we have a longish investigation that we will be traveling to at least 4 states, if not more. Basant, Kumar, Prateek, Goyal and Anmol, along with producers, will be going to Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Uttarakhand. And this is what we call the Hindu Rashtra Project, where there are certain buildings, government buildings that have declared themselves as Hindu Rashtra. Madhya Pradesh school has fired Muslim teacher because of a communal clash that he had nothing to do with. There are signboards in many states boycotting non-Hindus. So we are going to be investigating this entire narrative, how it is being funded, how it is being pushed, how much support it has on the ground and how much patronage it has. It's a very important chronicling of the times. We believe such a series of reports that really tells this complete story has not been put together. So do please contribute to both these projects. The link is in the show notes. There's a QR code. So please do support us on this. Thank you so much. Now coming to the fact checking in the US bit, Joyojeet, 2 things. One is we haven't had you on since the US election result. So on the larger theme of the Trump victory, what does it say about politics there? Did woke culture go too far? Because at least much of the analysis that I'm seeing in US media is blaming that. Although many people replicate that for India, that is not an issue in India as far as voting is concerned. I don't know why on Twitter 24 people are talking about it, but is it such a significant political issue there? One, and B, this Zuckerberg's gold chain, 32 crore watch or whatever, entire press conference saying that we are going to abandon fact checkers because they have a bias. My question was, so what? As long as it is accurate, even if it's biased, does this worry you? Because you do study social media at an academic level, that this is the complete collapse and decay of social media as any sort of public record of things that are sensible or accurate? Or is this reversible? Or do we see reinvention of social media? So both these questions, big questions, take your time.
I'm almost certain I will forget one or the other thread. So let me start with the easy one, which is that how do you study social media? And this has become a huge problem in academia because of the death of Twitter data to begin with, right? So many careers were made on Twitter data so long as it was free. Because it was complete data. See, you want a universe of data. So can you study how systematically misinformation spreads through a network? What is the role of individual nodes? What is the role of language? What kind of timing makes certain kinds of misinformation spread? All these were things that you could study very systematically with Twitter data in the past. Now, Elon Musk has made that largely impossible with a specific price tag he has put to it, which political parties can pay, but universities can't. So you can no longer have in the public domain certain kinds of research on what kinds of false narratives or innuendo or what have you is getting around. So this is a huge problem. The only kind of data of a large scale that is available right now, you have Reddit data. which is very, very biased because of a certain, who's on Reddit. It's not a universe of everybody's there that Twitter had going for it. Even if the population per se was small, every journalist was there. So what the public sphere was saying, we were able to track in a much more systematic way. Now that going and, Meta, their data anyways was controlled through a very narrow tunnel that was available only to people who had access to them in certain ways. So that data was anyways not very useful. And, they also worked with certain universities to do certain kind of experimental work, which ended up making them just very, very unpopular within the circles of people who studied this stuff. Now that means now what do we have left? We have TikTok data. And TikTok, of course, in India, you don't have that. But it restricts what we can make claims about in terms of how society as a whole is moving. This has very significant implications, especially given Meta's most recent decision. Now, if you look at what has happened to the networks which have taken away censorship completely, 4chan, 8chan, those have basically just vanished because they became so toxic that nobody wanted to be there anymore. Yeah. And Meta is taking the risk that they don't have to worry about that they are too big to fail, that Instagram, especially much more so, well, Facebook for one, has gone to a much older demographic in the US. So they're quite happy with the gain that they are probably going to get among older Americans who tend to lean much more rightwards by taking this decision. And Instagram, they're also taking the bet there that it is big enough and it is sort of unchallenged, at least in certain quarters among certain populations compared to others, so they can take this. What really surprised me about Zuckerberg's, what I really thought was, for a moment I wondered, is this AI generated? Because this is so strange. Was the way that he took a dump on California, which was almost like if you reversed it and said that he was moving it from Texas to California because Texans are a bunch of jokers. Liberals would not have that. Right? They would say, well, how dare you say something like that? And here he was clearly saying that, well, we're going to move these operations to Texas because the Californians can't be trusted. I mean, he explicitly says that. So this is a marker of how the US in the current era is turning on not only liberals, but even things which are associated with liberals, such as, in this case, an entire state. So,
or just decency, man.
I'm sorry?
Or just common decency. In America, often we've discussed here that it's institutionally strong, which is why an Elon Musk can keep trashing Biden and not worry that his industry is going to be closed down. Or, in previous administrations, or, whether it's late night TV hosts. But now with Trump explicitly saying that he will take all these guys on, it is taking an India type that, all these billionaires have to suck up to the president so that they get, I don't know, government contracts, because a lot of their business, I guess, is dependent on government regulation or contracts, at least a lot of spaces. So do you see that happening purely because Trump explicitly says that I will take revenge? And anyone could have done that and completely made institutions collapse. But he has been able to achieve that.
Yeah. So this is a very good point. So there's at least two populations which you can see had a very, very significant role in funding this current election. One, of course, is AIPAC, the pro-Israel funding group. And the other was the cryptocurrency people, right? And you could argue that both of these groups got a really good value for money. So if you were in crypto and you put your money on Trump and Trump won, your value just went up dramatically. And what we're really going to see happen with Donald Trump right now is this reckoning of Republicans who've actually been two very distinct groups coming together. One is social conservatives and the other is libertarians. What you're seeing in the Silicon Valley is the libertarians. They are not necessarily social conservatives at all. And now, especially with this H-1B drama, you're seeing the clash of those two, this kind of billionaire class, which was coming together because they are interested in either lower taxes. Many of them are also intertwined with other kinds of geopolitical stuff. And then suddenly they're realizing that the rural base of Trump does not align at all with some of the things that libertarians want. And the H-1B case was a explosion of that.
Right.
And I don't know in the process whether I forgot one of your other questions.
No, I think we've been pretty comprehensive. Amitav, you are a professor in the US. Are you on H-1B?
No, unfortunately, I became a citizen some time ago.
Oh, I see. Okay. So you're not on H-1B.
I was for a while. And I covered that industry for a book I was writing.
Oh, you did. What do you make of this? Are we just like he's had a previous term, he said a lot of shit, none of that really went down. Is Trump just a shit talker and institutionally America is strong enough to withstand the kind of nonsense about Greenland and NATO and ye and wo? Or do you actually see people like Zuckerberg and Elon Musk making a significant dent in just the relationship between political and administrative power and market power?
Well, you guys will be able to tell me, but don't you think, let's say, Adani's control of finances here and his substantial role to play in the work of the government here or the alliances in between them, isn't that quite powerful and able to determine, for example, what, let's say in the near future, the lives of the people in the Andamans will be because the 72,000 crore project is...
Absolutely.
Yeah. In that same way, I feel that just the power of both financial power, but also the clout they have in terms of information. I mean, Zuckerberg and Musk will indeed influence and alter the lives of common people, because how are my students, or if not my students, then so many, then their grandparents in Florida and other places in Pennsylvania, how are they getting the information and how are they sending them, where are they putting their money? मुझे तो लगता है कि जिसके पास power है इस तरह की, both on the purses but also on the means of dissemination of information, that they will indeed influence and alter the daily lives of people.
Which they have been doing. But my question is on the relationship between politics and that kind of power, because in America, I could, the kind of stuff that they say about Trump, his children, his wives, here, forget the state coming after you. If you said that about any political leader here, your own organization will say, arrest him, get him out of here. We don't want to deal with this shit. Trump could not say, I don't like you, Bezos. I'm going to finish your industry. Now you stand on your balcony, take out a patila and a karchi and start doing tung. Bezos will not do it because he knows Trump cannot finish his industry. Here, Ambani and his entire family will sit on the balcony and tung. Modi ji ne bola hai, we have to do it. That checks and balances. Do you think there's a collapse of that with Trump explicitly saying that, in fact, his post was that Zuckerberg would spend the rest of his life in jail, quote unquote. That is what he said a short while ago, that if this guy breaks rules, it was a direct threat. You think that has changed the relationship, the combative relationship between, like a Peter Thiel, I don't know how to pronounce that, but the kind of stuff that he said about previous under democratic rule presidency.
Yes.
No one could say that in India and get away with it.
Yes.
But now, if everybody started sucking up to Trump,
yes,
do you worry about the relationship changing?
I'm here publicly declaring the fact that India shows the way. जो इंडिया में आज होता है, कल अमेरिका में होगा.
Yeah.
Is that right? So, you agree, Joyojeet?
Yeah, I totally agree with this. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this kind of institutional capture, which we've seen, is we are en route to that. And what is more than institutional capture is this public acquiescence with this, assuming that this is right, this needs to be done. And this is why that attack on DEI was so important, is that it came from the Israel-Palestine conflict. It's where it actually started exploding, and it was partly aimed at universities, and from there it picked up a bunch of other people who were also libertarian aligned. I mean, it's a lot of the Indian American voters who voted for Trump were DEI type voters. Anti-DEI type voters, woke culture, whatever you want to call it. And these folks would be perfectly aligned with the capture of institutions in certain ways that we would have not thought common in the US. I mean, the fact that you're even saying this is somewhat surprising to me, because you could go back and watch, you could go back and watch Monty Python in the 1960s in the UK and say, wow, they were saying that. Is that amazing? No, man, that was normal. It is because we have gone through 10 years of rolling back that we are thinking, wow, because he was saying this about Joe Biden. How is that possible? No, they've always done that.
Right. So I hope those who thought that the first episode of Hafta of the year was very pessimistic, substantially and significantly upbeat on the positive vibes and notes.
Episode 1 was Death of India. Episode 2 is Death of America. It's all
Actually,
happening.
let me, on this, I'll point out something very interesting which I noticed. There was a movie called Lok Parlok. I don't know if you've seen this movie. Jitender, yes.
Correct.
So he's a union leader. He goes to, he dies and then he goes to heaven and then he causes too much trouble. And then from there he goes to hell and something.
I remember that.
And all that. And I remember that film because I used to love that film when I was a kid. And I saw it. It's on YouTube. Chalo jaake dekhte hai. And I remember there was this whole scene where there's a line of people standing outside Yamraj and Chitragupta or whatever. And he's counting out their sins. And then Jitendra gets into a court ka katghara and then starts answering some questions and says, "Arey, Bhagwan Indra ne to aisa kiya tha, tumne kya kiya iske baare mein," or something. And I wanted to listen to that scene because back when we were kids, we thought that was very funny, how a human takes on God and all that. And I realized that Goldmine Films or whoever puts these things, they had edited out that scene.
Are you serious?
Oh my God.
They had edited out that scene. You can actually go online and watch that movie.
Wow. I remember this one dialogue where he refers to Chitragupta as Mr. Gupta. Because he keeps the Bahi Khata of all the sins and whatever, punya and paap. And he says, Mr. Gupta, aap apni accounts dekhiye. And I was like, today if you were to refer to Chitragupta as Mr. Gupta, you probably have UAP against.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So you have forgotten in some places what it meant to be freer. Imagine the next generation, they will not even know that this was something that was commonplace for us.
No, I completely agree with you on that, Joyojeet, but that is a pop culture phenomenon which was a part of Nehruvian secularism, which I think was something very, very dear that the country needed, and the country should always be grateful for Nehru for that being the basis of our independent India's ethos and soul. But you could still not take on the prime minister. I mean, you kind of could, but you could.
Sure.
America, you could really take on anyone you wanted. You see, that First Amendment thing was too big to be compromised, like the Second Amendment.
You couldn't be selling toilet paper with the Prime Minister's face here.
Yes, there's no way. I mean, before the police came and filed an FIR, the mob would have burnt your shop, but there'd be no FIR against the mob, there'd be an FIR against you. I mean, that kind of stuff is, what I'm wondering about. But I know you have to leave at 12, Amitav. So we have 8 minutes with you, and I know it's very late for Joyojeet as well. So in the next 10 minutes, quickly, if I could just, first of all, Jayashree and Manisha, you want to weigh in on any of the pessimism of America, or was that to be expected? Manisha, what do you think?
I mean, I think there are two things to think about with this whole fact checker thing. One, I think Facebook has always had double standards when it comes to how it operated in the US versus the rest of the country. And we know with Myanmar's example,
right,
very well documented how it led to real world violence against Rohingyas. People were using Facebook as a search tool. And they were finding all sorts of stuff written about Rohingyas, and that really played a real world role in the violence that happened. So I think in terms of what it means for us, not much, because I don't think they've been anyway very good at policing fake news or false information online. This community notes thing is something to think of, because I don't know if you're being too pessimistic in how it may play out, because Wikipedia is actually a great example of how well policed it can be when you give editing over to a community.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible. I mean, it's very difficult to add. And this is one of the big grouse that the right wing in India has against Wikipedia, that it's controlled by the left. You can't add, delete anything from it. ANI has famously taken Wikipedia. So I think that's a great example of how you've given something to the community, and the community has been very responsible with information.
There are still gatekeepers and who's an editor.
Yeah. But
no, and also I feel, but the question here is not about the merits of community notes versus a fact-checking unit, right? The question here is that the motivation is malign. I mean, the reason why they're bending and doing these things is because, as you said, that Trump told him that I'm going to put you straight in prison because if you interfere with the 2024 election. So then I think Zuckerberg donated $1 million or whatever to Trump's inaugural fund. He appointed that Joel Kaplan to become the global policy chief.
And it starts with actually...
And now he's rolled this back.
Yeah. So whatever I've seen on Twitter also of community notes, I haven't seen anything alarming so far. The community notes have been fairly responsible and has given me accurate context of what the tweet is. The second thing I think is something that we all should think about as journalists and fact checkers. Again, there are no parallels with India because I think it's a very different ecosystem here. People are way more reliant on hyper-local news, which is still way truer than I think what the mainstream media gives you. But this anger against fact checkers as biased, where is it coming from? And there is this feeling, there is this sense among people, and I think that is something we need to explore. And I think that is one of the reasons why that happens is because people want to know, they're okay with being told what the facts are, but they don't want to be told how to feel about those facts. And I think fact checkers often do cross that line of telling you what a fact is, but then taking it ahead and telling you also how you must feel about a particular fact. So, for example, immigrants, what did he say? Eating cats and dogs or film. You want to be told that, okay, this isn't true, this hasn't happened, there is no such case that has happened around you, but you don't want to take that leap to let's welcome immigrants, or that you should not be scared of them, or that they're not altering your life. And I think when that happens, there is an immediate pushback among people of not wanting to be told how to feel about their core beliefs or emotions. And that's something that I think all journalists and fact checkers have to grapple with. It's happening, and we need to see how we tailor our information, how we communicate our information in a way that people don't feel we're pushy.
Right.
I mean, that's just something that we have to think about, at least, I feel.
Jayashree, was
I just want to jump in very quickly to say I don't agree at all. Like, I don't think people want to know if they're wrong. I don't think people want to know if they're posting something that is untrue. They don't want to be correct. People don't want to be corrected. It's not even just about that it's an attack on their fundamental beliefs. People have decided that this is what they believe, and they don't want. So I don't think it's fair to then say that journalists and fact checkers should find a better way to tell people that they're wrong, because that isn't what people want in the first place. They're very, like it's what Joyojeet said. Like he said that a lot of this is about changing things that are associated with liberalism. And that's exactly what that revised policy says. It says that you can now make allegations of mental illness or abnormality based on gender and sex. You're allowed to compare people to feces and filth based on protected characteristics. This is explicitly what the revised policy now allows.
I read about that. I mean, I think that's disgusting, but I do think free speech should protect that.
Free speech, absolutely. But that is completely separate.
Yeah, but fact-checking, I agree with you, but, you quoted Joyojeet, but someone more accomplished than Joyojeet had once told me, Abhinandan, apne facts apne paas rakhiye, let me do what I want, because facts are not
black
facts.
Black is white is black.
So, but Joyojeet, I know you want to say something. Can you just come in quickly, then we'll let Amitav give us, his monologue before he says bye.
Yeah, so on that, there's three very quick, there's models of how you think about misinformation. There's epistemic drivers of misinformation. So basically, epistemic means you don't know what's happening. So classic case would be, in Delhi, somebody says, "Acha, Chandni Chowk kaun se side mein?" Us taraf jao. You don't know, but you don't want to disappoint the person who says, "Acha, us taraf chale jao." Or somebody says, "Okay, Nvidia stock is going to go up or down." Nobody knows, but it's like, okay, it makes me comfortable to think it's going to go up. So that's epistemic. Yeah. Second is existential misinformation, which is that you are at some kind of risk and therefore you're at much higher chance of misinformation, of accepting misinformation. Traditionally, this was driven by Black communities' risk of having rumors. And because if you were Black in civil rights or even before United States, you were at serious existential risk. And so you were much more likely to be prone to some kinds of misinformation, rumors, etc. And this explains very much why COVID and things like that have a huge spike in misinformation, because that's an existential threat of some kind. And the third, and this is what goes to Jayashree's point, and perhaps the most dangerous kind of misinformation, which is called sociocultural drivers of misinformation, where I believe that my community is opposed to this other community, and therefore anything that is false that is said about that community, I'm willing to accept. Okay. And in some cases, I actually know that this is not true, but it aligns with my worldview. Therefore, I will immediately say, "Oh yeah, that sounds that it's totally correct." And even if I know it's not true, I'm going to go ahead and propagate it. And that's the kind of thing that we have a much higher risk of going about now. And you imagine that that's going to get overlaid with existential risks, which are definitely coming our way, climate-related, other kinds of economic-related drama that's going to happen. Again, I know you're trying to be, upbeat with your second episode or whatever, but there you are.
But that's right.
Too late for that.
So, Amitav, before we say goodbye, closing thoughts on the book, on anything else that might change the mood of the Hafta.
Sure thing. My book is called The Green Book, and I've just finished teaching a course at Vassar called Writing About the Anthropocene. Or yesterday, the day before, you've seen in the news, Los Angeles is burning.
Fires, man.
And one of the books I taught there was called The Heat Will Kill You First. And the other book, which was by Jeff Goodell, another book I taught was by John Vaillant, and it was called Fire Weather, which talks about how all our cities are going to burn unless we change our policies, unless we stop fossil burning, वगैरह. तो वो एक चीज, it's pessimistic, but on the other hand, we recognize the conditions under which such suffering is taking place, and we take steps. तो वो बात कहनी थी. One thing I want to say, especially because I'm in India at the moment, is कि बिहार में, चंपारण में या मुजफ्फरपुर में, I got a piece of news where a professor, someone like me and like Joyojeet, had said something critical of a BJP leader, and then his students stripped him and made him apologize. And because you were talking about what is the differences between these two political landscapes, I must say I'm haunted by that idea कि ऐसा हमारी स्थिति में भी हो सकता है क्या? और कम से कम यहाँ तो होता ही है. The fact that it is happening here haunts me. And I always feel कि if I give a lecture here or something, किस तरह से मैं I might provoke an audience, and I'm just sharing a worry. Or
I on that quickly, I think politics being the reason of it is new. But violence against at university has come down, at least in Delhi. When I was in DU, I'm talking late 80s, early 90s. There was, in front of me, the principal of my college was slapped by a student there because there was fear. The entire NSUI, ABVP gangs and the Chandraval Jats who used to come, Rang De Basanti, that DJ character, he's a very accurate DU character. There were guys who were 30, 35-year-olds who'd hang around the canteens and forget students, no professor would even fuck with them. But the trigger for violence was never political. It was, how dare you stop my bike from coming to the canteen? Because bikes could not come. So it'd come in a bullet. If someone stopped Amit Bhai, he'd get off and whack. That guy could be a professor. It wasn't because Amit Bhai didn't give a shit about BJP or this. It didn't matter. That is new. But violence against professors has actually come down, I think.
Okay. ठीक है, अच्छी बात है.
But political, yeah.
Yeah. One thing, because we started with discussion of journaling, I just want to repeat was that I did read Vrinda Grover saying the state is not going to keep a record of the violence against you, but you should keep a record.
Right.
आज तुमने किसको देखा क्या करते हुए वो लिखो. And
so that's what you're...
That's what I'm plugging really in terms
and
of...
encouraging others as well.
Encouraging others to do. But, because we started with talking about optimism and pessimism, Antonio Gramsci had said that we should have the pessimism of the intellect and optimism of the will.
Nice.
So I want to say कि जब मैं मनीषा पांडे को देखता हूँ mocking mainstream media, ANI, etc., or when I see you debating is the wrong word to use, but how shall I say, humiliating Vivek Agnihotri, it does gladden the cockles of my old heart. और तो वहाँ पर हम optimistic हो सकते हैं, is what I'm saying. As long as there are certain oxygen producing agencies in the world, this poisonous air will not kill us. But we should of course promote and support. क्या वो campaign का नाम है भाई? Poison क्या? Fight to breathe.
Fight to breathe.
हाँ, तो आप लोग
हवा का हक.
हाँ, आप लोग metaphorically fight to breathe भी कर रहे हैं और literally भी कर रहे हैं, तो उसको I applaud.
And we have bought an AQI measure for $12,000 with money that you guys contributed. You can contribute more. And we're going to piece to camera regularly outside Supreme Court judges' homes, outside chief ministers' houses, outside environment ministers' houses. This is what it is. If they can be guilted into saying, do something, this is your own house, your own children, have some shame, and across party lines. So, thank you. So, thank you, Amitav. Before you go,
yes,
other than the book, the green book, which you can pick up, and the link is in the show notes, any other recommendation for our viewers and listeners that could enrich their lives?
What should we listen to
or read?
And read?
It need not be political, or it could be anything.
I cannot still abandon that idea of the nature writing course. So मैं सोच रहा था कि I'm sure many people in India have already watched Shaunak Sen's film All That Breathes. But I want to advocate for that again. क्योंकि for two things. एक, क्योंकि we are talking about fight to breathe. So it seems, but also because it allows us to imagine what a political aesthetic can be. You start watching the film, you think that it is about kites. It's about those birds. But you realize it's about people. And that way of introducing politics is, I think, a wonderful lesson. So even if you have seen it, watch it once again. And if you have not seen it, please watch Shaunak Sen's All That Breathes.
Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you. It's such a delight being here, man. It's an honor. And I hope, like Joyojeet, you make me a regular on this show.
Right? I hope so too.
Take care. Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.
Okay. Now, Joyojeet, before, I know it's very late for you. Just want you to weigh in on one thing, and the rest of the panel as well. This constant theme that Elon Musk keeps pushing. Now, you are the media. Like, it is such a, in my view, and tell me if I'm being too self-indulgent and I'm appropriating the gatekeeping role like old media, which Newslaundry was actually a pushback to. But what he says, that everything on Twitter is media, that is news, is bizarre. It is the only reason, and because he clearly doesn't understand media. I've heard several of his interviews in what is the expectation for news, what is the purpose and role of news in a society. Like, just any bullshit noise is not news and is not media in the sense what news is supposed to do. It could be reality shows, etc. Now, he understands spaceships clearly. I don't know, I've recommended this in Hafta in the past, the James Webb telescope, which some of the scientists call the Just Wonderful telescope because of the accusations of inappropriate behavior against James Webb, after who the telescope is named. Some of the people who are studying that say that Musk's satellites are causing too much of problems in viewing galaxies, billions of light years away. Right now, there are about 10,000 odd active satellites out there in space and about 1,500 dead ones, which is just space debris. They are assuming the pace at which Musk wants to launch satellites, there could be 20 to 30,000 satellites in the next few years, which would completely clutter space, leading to a lot of problems at various levels for, observatories, scientists, defense, many things. The only barrier to entry of launching a satellite is money. If any schmuck could launch a satellite, the orbit of the Earth would be bumping into each other. There'd be chaos. When he says Twitter is the media, isn't that a ridiculous understanding of media by someone who's clearly very brilliant as far as engineering is concerned, but is a complete moron when it comes to media? Or are we saying that we are the arbiters of truth and the collective conscience is not? Can you make sense of you are the media? Twitter, like, it reminds you of Bane. If you've seen Batman, you are the law. Scene, you remember? When he says that.
Oh, God.
Have you guys seen the film? You know the scene I'm talking about?
Yes.
So Bane is that guy who wears that mask, who's that super villain. When Gotham City, everything breaks down, he says the mob will rule. You are the law. You are the media.
Twitter is the public square.
Yeah.
It's the only public square that should
What do you make of that? If everybody could launch a satellite with as much credibility.
So this is very much aligned with a lot of the both Trump and Elon Musk's desire to get rid of what they think of as intermediaries. And again, coming back to the earlier point which was made, which is how India is showing the way. If you look at what happened in India with politicians eschewing doing interviews with journalists and instead starting to do them with influencers or people who had more of a voice on places like Twitter, that has now crept into the US as well. So you can imagine that no serious editor would have given any credence to Donald Trump's claim on Greenland or on the Panama Canal, right? But now suddenly he's able to whip up sort of public outrage and say, well, maybe we do deserve to have the Panama Canal back. Maybe it is important that US gets Greenland, or that the Gulf of Mexico should be renamed as the Gulf of America. So where does an idea which is ridiculous suddenly become mainstream? And it becomes mainstream if it gets some kind of support from whatever we think of as an authority in the past that was journalists, and in the future that might very well be people who are gatekeepers on social media spaces.
Or maximum
and
likes.
Elon Musk.
Or maximum followers. Or maximum likes. Or maximum
likes. But it's also like, it's not just maximum likes. It's the combination of maximum likes with the creation of some kind of authority, and you just look at what happened with when Elon Musk decided to cut off Laura Loomer from her tick mark for saying something which he didn't agree with. This should be extremely concerning even for the far right in the United States, right? And if you look at what's been talked about with Panama Canal right now, it's very interesting what's happening in the renaming of the West Bank as Judea and Samaria. And now you have Gulf of Mexico becoming Gulf of America. And now there's this, it's okay to take land. It's very fascinating that when Saddam Hussein went after Kuwait, his claim to go after Kuwait was that the emirs were asking for too much money. Yeah. And Donald Trump is saying that he's going to take Panama Canal because Panama is asking them for too much money, which is ironic, because if you look at the history of the Panama Canal, it was Colombian territory until Theodore Roosevelt supported and basically engineered a coup to have Panama separated so that the US could build a canal and own it, which it did for several years. And it's very interesting now that Jimmy Carter just died, and Carter had actually turned over the Panama Canal to
Panama, correct?
Panama.
Right.
And that ethic, which seemed like, this is a benevolent US which wants the world to survive on its own terms or to build its own lives, that's gone. Now it's all out in the open that this is the new US. Imperialism is a term that is going to be embraced. The idea of threatening Denmark over Greenland somebody would have laughed this off a few years ago, but it's it's worth wondering, is that going to hurt negotiations of certain kinds? It's something that's happening in Canada already, that Canada's not going to become US's 51st state by any stretch. But now it suddenly puts them in a very weird negotiating position with Trump when Trump comes into power and Justin Trudeau is lame duck.
Absolutely.
So yes, they've reframed media completely.
Also, two things that India was also the pioneer of, and as we say in Punjab, pioneer, which is going to be the new pronunciation of the word, because everything we do, the world does tomorrow. One is renaming things. Trump has learned that from India. You cannot address inflation. We will rename this, you'll rename that. In fact,
of America.
I saw
What a beautiful name.
this, what's that guy's name, that late night host? He said, I'll just tell you his name. He had an entire section that this is, because Trump can't address that. He's just on this renaming spree. I'm like, hello, that's Seth Meyers. He did I said, hello, we've been doing that forever.
Yeah.
And the second thing that we were the pioneers of, I don't know if you remember, I know Jayashree and Manisha would be too young. Joyojeet, when I was young, we used to often, because Hollywood was the standard and Bollywood was the wannabe. Of course, Ghungru changed that when Hindi music in nightclubs became the staple and English music became the who dances to English music.
Ghungru, you mean like the nightclub?
The nightclub, right. So before that, no party or nightclub would ever play Hindi music. Today, no nightclub party plays English music. So that was a cultural turning point. But at that time, Indian film stars would do ads, endorsements of cars, banyan, kacha, chappal. And Hollywood stars didn't do that. You didn't see Sylvester Stallone saying, I wear Cartier or Lux Cozy or something. But within, I think, late 90s is when we saw Hollywood also. It started from Tag Heuer. Tag Heuer had, I think, one of these big Hollywood stars, Pierce Brosnan or someone. And then slowly, Hollywood stars started doing endorsements from sport brands to food brands to now even bloody Bitcoin. India started this in 30 years ago. Hollywood never used to do endorsements. It was beneath Hollywood stars to do endorsements. So we've been the pioneers.
If it's worth anything, Tamil Nadu mein Rajinikanth never did endorsements. And in fact, I'm Jayashree, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think that Kamal Hassan also did it. But at the same time, Rajinikanth specifically would say that my image belongs to my fans, and I will not put it my people, right? So and I can't put it to a product.
Well, that's the loss of Vimal. Sorry, Vimal's loss is Rajinikanth's gain.
Man, I was so sad when someone told me that Vimal ad with Ajay Devgan, who are the others? Akshay Kumar and
Shah Rukh Khan and Tiger Shroff.
Someone told me, but they're not actually shooting together.
Yeah, you can make out.
I couldn't make out. I was so excited. I was like, 3 stars. Like, I'm a very gullible ad watcher.
Oh,
I'm very smart in many ways, but I love buying into ads.
Is that why we have to tell you before every hafta, please go spit out the pan masala brashari and cow kar. Ama Vimal ke saath hafta ka maza hi kuch.
I was very sad, yeah.
But Joyojeet, thank you so much for staying up so late for us. I really appreciate it. Before you go, any recommendations?
So I'm obviously a regular listener of Hafta, and I notice you never recommend children's books. So I'm going to recommend something that my 9-year-old daughter has been reading, and she's been reading the set of books called I Survived. And firstly, it's wonderful to see a 9-year-old child just walking around with a book like everywhere. And this is a series of books about various catastrophes and children who survived through. So it like walks through the story like as though you're a child, and this is what so it's I survived the Black Death, I survived the Nazi invasion, etc., etc. So it's a whole series, and it is serious stuff, but presented in a way that children of that age can appreciate it. And some people listening out there have kids that they would like to read.
Wonderful. That's optimistic enough. But thank you so much, Joyojeet. Really appreciate you staying up for us. We'll talk later.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. So I didn't come to both of you on that whole thing of, you are the media. Is the only reason that you are the media is legitimate because the barrier to entry of just tweeting out bullshit is more than the barrier of entry of launching a satellite? If I said you are the space engineers and everybody had enough resources to launch a satellite, what would that make space? Is that an unfair equivalence?
See, my basic problem with your entire argument is I don't think Musk is brilliant in any sort of way. I mean, this idea of we are the media now is very nice in theory. I understand why it has currency on both sides, because one side thinks that the media has become too liberal, it's become bought over by the left, all that bullshit, and they want to be in charge of their own narrative. That's one. But on the other side also, you have people who are pushing back against terrible forms of misinformation, especially over things like Israel and Palestine. So there is, I think, a trust deficit on both sides, which is why a lot of people look to social media now as some kind of answer. I'm unconvinced about social media as a form of an answer, but I do think it has its values in sort of first-hand information, things like that. My thing with Musk, so I have 2 points. One is my thing with Musk, which is that I don't think he's brilliant at all. I think his genius lies in making people think he's a visionary. And we live in a time when people want a visionary.
Like
they want
Trump.
someone who seems... Yeah, like they want someone who is a kind of Batman kind of figure, like whatever that parallel you made with that man. I can't remember his name.
Bane.
They want something like that. But if you look at the facts, it is that he is born into wild wealth. If he had been Russian, newspapers would call him an oligarch. But because he's not a Russian billionaire, we will call him a billionaire, standalone and a visionary. He was removed as CEO of the first 2 companies he started. He sold them later and then whatever, he got a lot of money. Tesla is lauded as one of the most, this great company, but that also is plagued by issues. The reason why Musk has survived so far is one, he has family wealth and all those mines and things, and also he gets fabulous state subsidies. So I think that is one. My second thing is on this entire thing of America. I think Joyojeet used the phrase benevolent superpower, like now we always, but I don't think America has ever been a benevolent superpower. And I know people think that I go on these anti-American sort of rants, but I want to clarify that these are not rants, because they are rants, but these are rooted in things that are true. So I have recommended this book before called The Jakarta Method, which is about how the US killed millions and millions of people in Indonesia, in Brazil, in Guatemala, in Chile. It's the preemptive killing of millions of people by a country that had no business to be there. Mm-hmm. And it is the unilateral action in pursuit of an ideological intangible. They thought they were killing communists, which resulted in deaths. And the thing is, so much has been documented and so much exists in public consciousness about the violence of communist regimes. But this sort of chapter of history has a little bit fallen to the wayside. And it is in such recent memory. We talk a lot about what happened with America and the Middle East, but this too is very recent history. And I think, therefore, when we were talking about Trump, I think Trump is the essence of America. I think people like to think he's an aberration, but I think he is America in its very naked form, without artifice, without disguise, without public relations. It is dangerous. It is unhinged. And yes, his actions will have harmful repercussions, but I think he sort of embodies the spirit of what America has stood for in its imperialist form for a very long time.
And also, the fact that he appeared on everything from reality shows to films to
that is America.
WWE, and now it is okay. I think what is your view?
Elon Musk and news. I mean, just see what he's done this week with his tweeting of the grooming gang.
Oh,
and
God.
It's become a primetime show in India, like na tumhara lena na dena.
No, but that's what the problem is. I think journalists also falling into this trap just because he's tweeted something. This case has been so well documented, so well reported. It's almost a decade old. The case, of course, is Pakistani men leading this grooming gang, and scores of young girls were sexually abused.
And Guardian has done a lot of reporting on this.
Guardian has done, Al Jazeera has done. The people that Musk calls woke and feminists, those people were at the forefront of fighting against the police back then, that they are not taking these cases seriously, and asked seriously harsh questions of the administration back then. Starmer, who is accused of being complicit in the mass rapes, was a public prosecutor who saw prosecutions of one of the gangs, at least one of the grooming gangs. So I think journalists are also to be blamed that he's put this thing out as if some secret has been unearthed by Elon Musk on the public square of Twitter. No one would have known that this happened had it not been for Elon Musk, but it's one of the most well-documented, well-reported cases. And in India, you've had now suddenly explainers and journalists talking about us like, oh, we don't know what this case was. And look, this guy, Starmer was at the forefront of it and hiding it. journalists also have this work to do, that just because he's tweeted something out and he's, Twitter's head doesn't mean you start now.
Yeah, on that, I guess I agree with, although I think, the right-wing voices in government have a different target in mind. But when they said, what do these journalists know, etc., I think that's very true for today's broadcast journalists.
Yeah.
Won't take names, but I have spoken to some. They do not know 30-year-old history. The same thing, like, did anyone cover Jammu and Kashmir exodus? Fuck. Newstrack was there were no satellite channels. So did Doordarshan cover 2002 riots? Did Doordarshan cover... that's a state, but the private ones did. And it was really, it was done better than it is done today.
Yeah.
I just think that this whole thing of journalists not doing it is absolutely true. But that is because the tail wagging the dog, what I've said. Twitter decides what will be prime time.
And he's absolutely not. I mean, I think being the purveyor of news is scary. Just seeing what he's done the last 1 week.
Yeah.
And everything for him, it's so stupid. Everything he does is on the back of journalistic work. Like, he cannot know about this grooming scandal
if it
was not for journalists who wrote about it. But he's putting it out as if some investigation he's done on his own. And look, I've exposed Dharma.
Yeah, you were saying, Jayashree?
No, I was going to say there's one very good example of misinformation on Twitter and then how it's just sort of repeated by the media, which happened last night. You guys know Dilip? Did you guys see Dilip Mandal's tweet? So basically, there is this activist and teacher called Fatima Sheikh. She was a contemporary of Savitribai Phule. She's been written about in various things. Dilip Mandal has written a piece about her in the print, and this was 5 years ago. Dilip Mandal, for those who don't know, is a journalist, but now he's also media advisor to the IND ministry. And he's become quite right-wing in recent times. So
I don't know about right, but he's become a Modi supporter, basically.
Lil nutty he's become, yeah. So he's written about Fatima Sheikh before for the print 5 years ago. Why does no one remember her legacy? So then last night he put up the most absurd tweet, which is, friends, I have a confession. And he said that I must confess, I have fabricated this character called Fatima Sheikh. Please forgive me. She never existed in real life. I don't know why I did it, but circumstances drove me to do it.
What?
And I am the one who created her. So,
Is that true?
He literally put up the tweet last night. And it's a very long tweet. And the thing is, so many people are telling him, but no, I mean, Fatima Sheikh did exist. He's like, no. I only made her. I created her. So now the whole media has picked it up. Sort of very right-wing Twitter has picked it up saying, aha, now we know this person never existed. Dilip Mandal has confessed it. But she did exist. I mean, there are historical accounts of her from before, whenever Dilip Mandal wrote about her. So, but for me, what was shocking is just that it's become a thing now. Like, people are now saying, did this woman really live? Yes, she did. So, anyway, yeah.
But how crazy of him to do something like this? To say that he invented it.
I just think this is, at least I'm seeing what he's tweeted in English and Hindi, and it's got a political purpose because it's aimed at Kejriwal, because Kejriwal took an ad with Fatima Sheikh, and he's... See, that of course, but I'm saying the fact that it's already become headlines, the media has already jumped all over it. Also that the print has taken down its story that on Fatima Sheikh, saying now we have to conduct an investigation. It is just so reactive to something that was put out in a tweet by this random person. And I'm going over his Twitter.
And he could
tomorrow
say that, that was a satire, actually. I didn't make it up.
I'm going over, I don't think I've ever met this person, but he's a bit off, man. Like,
he's a little nutty.
Not little.
He used to be a very staunch critic of Hindutva.
No, I'm going over his Twitter. This is bizarre. Anyway, okay.
So there are pieces on Fatima Sheikh, very well documented pieces.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he has now said she's a fabrication.
And he is the one who has created
and all these Twitter accounts are now saying, see, this is how left space has invented people for us to feel whatever. So
right.
Crazy.
Now we'll do the emails, but before I do that, a message from a very special guest.
Hello. I am Sumedha, reporter at Newslaundry. Welcome to a new year with the same old us. How many news organizations let reporters work on a single story for months? Last year, I spent 3 months investigating targeted voter deletions and fake voter additions just before the 2024 Lok Sabha elections. To uncover this story, I analyzed data from over 5,000 polling booths and interviewed more than 4,000 voters, asking one crucial question: Was their vote wrongly deleted? Such investigations require many other resources and a team involving editors, graphic designers, production team, and social media staff. But we can make it all happen because at Newslaundry, we prioritize public interest journalism. We remain independent so we can pursue such investigations without fear of corporate or political pressures. So who do we depend on? You. If you are not a Newslaundry subscriber yet, please consider becoming one. Scan this QR code and subscribe to keep news free.
So the Delhi elections have been announced. They're going to be on the 5th of February. We are going to be on the ground interviewing candidates, doing stories on Delhi, looking at AAP's report card for the past 10 years. We have a lot of stuff lined up. And as usual, we come to you. We ask you to support our election reporting endeavor. We have an NL Sena up, which is on Delhi elections. Your contributions to this NL Sena will power our coverage. We have an entire month of coverage lined up looking at civic issues, looking at pollution in Delhi, looking at the state of education, looking at the state of promises that were made by the current government and what has been achieved on ground. So all of that will be powered by you guys. We want you to support our NL Sena election on Delhi so we can hit the ground, get our reporters going. And of course, we'll also have Srinivasan Jain partnering with us this election too. So your contribution will support his interviews with some important people in Delhi politics. Your contribution will power reporting by Basant, Anmol, Sumedha, and a host of other reporters in Newslaundry. And of course, we also have another election show where Atul and I will hit the ground in Delhi and get you some interesting conversations. So support our election reporting, power our journalism, support our NL Sena on Delhi elections for a thoroughly and completely ad-free election reportage.
Okay, so now for the emails, we only enter in the emails of subscribers. So you can mail us at podcasts@newslaundry.com. I repeat, podcasts@newslaundry.com. Please, in the subject line, write Hafta and limit them to 150 words. Or you can click in the link in the show notes below and it'll open out a form, which I have been informed by several mails, says 200 words. So the form should be consistent with 150 words. I don't know why no one's noticed this discrepancy so far. So that should be corrected. So yes, do give us feedback, suggestions, criticism, etc., etc., etc. So you guys want to take it from here?
So before we go on, there's one quick thing I want to talk about. So on our podcast and on Hafta, we talk a lot about communalism and about the changing face of India. But I think it's important that we really look at how this journey took place. And this is exactly what we're doing in our next NL Sena project. It's called the Hindu Rashtra Project. And we will be tracing the story of how laboratories for Hindutva are being formed in various states. This is through Gujarat, through Madhya Pradesh, through Uttarakhand, through everyday news stories, but that are forming a bigger picture. So we are sending 3 reporters on the ground. This is Basant, Prateek, and Anmol. They will explore these issues through video stories. They will figure out the influential players driving this agenda, how resources are being utilized, and how society itself is being fundamentally changed. So your contribution can send them on their way, and you can help us tell stories that we think are truly in public interest. So scan the QR code that you're seeing on your screen and support us now.
So, Simar Kaur says, have been a subscriber for 2 years, primarily consuming news through NL Hafta. However, recently discovered Reporters Without Orders through the 2024 Wrap episode and would highly recommend this to all Hafta listeners. If you enjoy the conversation on Hafta, the kind of insight and honest conversation on Reporters Without Orders would also appeal to you. Yes, please tune in to our reporters talking about all the hard work they put in every week after week, relentlessly reporting from the ground. Aminder says, hi NL team, I found Let's Talk About podcast about Punjab limited in scope and new insights. It is common to reduce the discussion about Punjab to the period of turmoil and ignore the events and phenomena that have transpired since. Why Punjab has fallen behind on economic front, the exodus of youth to different countries, the deeply entrenched caste system. I feel after covering Operation Blue Star and its aftermath in one episode, the second should be dedicated to the following years.
Okay, noted. Although this Punjab series was about the conflict, I think Punjab has a bigger story on being this state of that feeds the country to having deficits that are alarming.
Vishnu says, why does the title right above says 200 words in the pod? It's 150. Please fix.
Yes, Vishnu.
I know NL doesn't take any ad money, but is the monetization completely off? I've been using YouTube premiums because ads for a while now, mostly watching NL videos, and would like to know if NL gets any money from that. Anyway, great work. Thank you. Yeah, so ads are completely off.
So Vishnu, how it works is sometimes if we take, let's say, an audio clip or a movie clip from somebody else, YouTube allows whoever clip is taken to monetize that. I mean, although the rules of fair use are vague, and as you know, we've been in court with 2 different organizations arguing this, they can turn on monetization and then take the money for that. But we have turned off our monetization. But sometimes when we use a clip from someone, they turn on their monetization. But yeah, that we don't turn it on. Ours is completely off.
Abhijit says, hello, Abhinandan and team. Happy New Year. Your reference to Dinanath Batra. I think it is inappropriate to refer to him as the standard of right-wing scholarship in India. It is people like Ram Swaroop and Sitaram Goyal who have driven right-wing scholarship in India. There are fringe elements, of course, but they aren't the standard. I think by saying something like this, we fall into the trap that is quite typical in academic circles globally, which usually leans left, and that is to discredit right-wing scholarship by only referring to certain elements who are on the fringe. Also, I thoroughly enjoyed your interview with Shalini Pasi. It was amazing. And I disagree with people who comment saying how such light interviews are not what Newslaundry is about. I think there's space for us to let our hair down, especially considering the times we live in.
Yeah,
I like that a lot. I mean, I like that sentiment. We need to let our hair down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Abhijit, the point taken. The reason, I get what you said about Ram Swaroop and Sitaram Goyal. In fact, they've been referred to earlier also in one of the Haftas as right-wing scholarship. But Mr. Batra was actually appointed in a position of authority as a advisor for academia by, I think, the Haryana government, if I'm not wrong. Which is why in the contemporary world, that is why I don't think there's any one standard. Like even of, I think, liberal, in India, left-wing scholarship, one could say Romila Thapar, but she's not the standard. I mean, there is a Romila Thapar, there is a Guha, there is, there are people who are very critical of Nehru. And of course, because of the fragmentation of society, a lot of Ambedkarite scholars will not be as kind to Nehru as, let's say, Guha would be. So there is no standard. But the reason I took him was that he was bloody appointed here. That is what is alarming.
But he's not a historian at all, huh? He's a educationist.
Yeah, which he was not put for history, but for curriculum development.
Basically looking at the curriculum, Indianizing the curriculum. So, okay, Abhijit again says, Happy New Year. Is the same Abhijit? No, another
Different
Abhijit
spelling.
says, Hi, Happy New Year, NL team. The panel was too pessimistic in its prediction. In 100 years, there's an even chance people will say that 2025 was the high point of RSS influence and it was all downhill from here. After all, 5 years ago, Modi was unsaleable and now the panel was discussing how he's losing ground to the RSS. Maybe in 100 years, the dominant view will be that Modi was so desperate on losing his position of power that he tried to frame Rahul Gandhi. I would also love to get Anand's predictions whenever he next joins.
We'll ask him.
You can count on him for optimism.
Yeah, you can count on him for optimism. I'll tell him you said that.
S says, Hi Abhinandan, a few months ago you mentioned a Let's Talk About on transgender issues you were putting together with some subscribers. I was wondering what happened to that and if you'll be putting that out because I was looking forward to it. I appreciate all the work done by NL. Thank you.
Jayashree will take that question.
Yeah, we've done one round of recording, but then we had to take a break because the producer for the podcast has changed. But we're picking it up again by the end of the month. So hopefully it'll be out in a month or 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're absolutely coming out with it.
We've done a 2-hour recording with 5 panelists and we'll be doing one more recording. So we'll probably have recorded by the end of it about 4.5, 5 hours. So we'll break it up into maybe 2 or 3.
Yeah, the thing is that we started with the big initial recording and then we realized there was so much that can be said. And then the idea came that we need to expand it. We can't just limit it to a couple of hours. It needs a lot more time.
But it's being done.
Yeah.
Venu says, Regarding Hafta 518, I'm writing this right after listening to this week's Hafta. I was pretty annoyed by the discussion on the length of some of the subscriber emails. By simply brushing aside emails that don't conform to the word limit, you're insulting the time and effort spent by the subscriber to send feedback. You don't have to read the lengthy or even any email word for word. You can at least acknowledge the gist and the feedback and respond to it. I don't care if you don't read my emails. I'm sure most won't either. But by saying they won't be read or we'll stop at the word limit is silly and insulting. I just subscribed to the joint NL-TNM subscription for another year. I must say, it's the partnership with TNM that made me continue the subscription.
Thanks, Venu. I mean, on this, there are various, feedback we've read on this also, that many people say that the emails just take too much time. You should just...
Yeah. But we do read them. Even if we may not read them on Hafta, we do go over them, even if they're lengthy.
But that is something that I have said, that we do go over them, and often we acknowledge a certain point that has been made. But yeah, we can't read all of it. And point taken.
Vatsal says you need to fix feedback page Google form. It prompts and puts limits on feedback length at 200 words, which is why my letters are around 160, 170 words. If you want to strictly keep the limit at 150 words, you need to fix it here, or at least mention in prompt, because when one writes the letter, it is the prompt that comes to mind. Otherwise, it's really uncool when I'm well under the stated limit of 200 words, yet my letters were not read on NL Hafta because they were more than 150 words.
Yeah, we'll fix that, Vatsal. I don't understand how that's been happening for so long.
Indu says, listen to yet another depressing Hafta discussion on cow-linked Musalman murder. How real is Hindu love for Gau Mata? I know not. But need for dairy products is very real in our malnourished society. It seems almost impossible to sustain dairy consumption without having cattle slaughter dependent industries. How many cows are required to meet Indian dairy needs? How many cows do we have in India? What is a cow's lifetime productivity? What is the cost of maintaining a cow? What is a cow's lifespan and milking span? How many Indians are dependent on cattle-dependent economy? How much are we contributing to global warming by keeping cows alive? And where are the male calves? My God, it's like
Manisha's
questions on how. Hope you could host an animal husbandry expert to discuss the economics of cattle rearing and allied industries. Wow.
That's actually a very interesting idea, the economics of cow.
Yeah.
Then it's something we don't actually know.
Yeah, the economics of cow would be very interesting.
Why not?
Good idea.
Good interesting. Suman says, this isn't a negative remark! Exclamation. Even though he was promoting his book, the interview with Jasmine seemed too much like an advertisement for AAP after he claimed he was not part of the party anymore and was a free bird, while highlighting the model is another thing. Many of the stats he shared are something that I cannot verify personally, as I don't live anywhere close to Punjab or Delhi. But if what he says is true and can be verified, it really feels like the light at the end of the tunnel. Can we have a small segment like India Today's Good News Today? News in general is a downer, like the air quality campaign, and positive news like the schools Jasmine spoke about will brighten one's day. I can see some partnerships with cartoonists with TNM and NL, and I look forward to more of those.
Manisha, remember we tried doing that?
Good news.
Positive news campaign. We did one thread of it.
Oh, yeah.
COVID.
Was it during COVID? Yeah.
For a couple of weeks, but then so again, it started off with the same intention that we thought, you need to highlight some really, especially during a pandemic, some sort of happy stuff. But I think by the end of the week, we realized it was really force-fitting news into it just for the sake of sounding upbeat. It wasn't organic. It wasn't real.
Sumant, my view on news is that generally it will be critical.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are some positive stories, a feel-good story. But I mean, at least even back when I used to be a full-time reporter for the 4 years that I was, I would say the trigger cannot be let me look for a good news story. If something is interesting, it could end up being an upbeat story. But yeah, we are focusing a lot on investigations right now, so maybe that doesn't emerge. I don't know, Manisha, what's your view?
Yeah, it would be hard to dedicate someone to just looking at positive stories. But yeah, stories of triumph, stories of people overcoming, difficulties, that maybe we could.
Yeah.
I would say I very much dislike stories of people who have overcome. I mean, I know I like stories about people, but I just don't like to think that, oh my God, this person take inspiration from the fact that they suffered so much in life, but they are still alive and doing well. It's like, I don't know.
And regarding your previous thing, I kind of agree that when a technocrat says that he or she is a free bird and is not aligned with the party, it is not entirely honest, because technically, there are many, an NK Singh could say that I've served with different, parties, governments, but, one knows who one, like, or Montek, he's also served under the Vajpayee government. But if he were to say that I have no loyalty to the Congress, so I guess you're right. That's true for a lot of technocrats, and they like to say that. But the data that he said is, by and large, it's verifiable. The one thing that, in fact, I could not real-time fact check, but I'm not sure about the Delhi's deficit reducing. But yeah, they like too much data was.
Sesha Sai says, I love the promos your team have been doing to educate us on why we need to subscribe. Awesome job, very creative. Thank you for showing behind the scenes in a funny way. You may like to show more behind the scenes work to make us understand what it takes to run an organization like NL and TNM. Thank you, and may you become stronger by the day.
Thank you, and may we all become stronger by the day, Sesha.
Amrita says, thanks for all the work. The show has replaced my weekly Bill Maher viewing, which disappointed me since the Israel war. I must say your first 2025 show was overly negative. On history revisionism, at any point in history, hope for humanity was made possible by those dedicated to something that improves us. I think if we were sitting in 1900 India, having the discussion with the empire around us, wondering what the future books will say, and taking the same pessimistic view, we could have easily come with India's lost answer. Yet somehow we progressed as society through leaders and the will of good people. The story is told by the ideologies that stand the test of time. The only way the changes in history books survive is if those who want a positive world give up. But that is true whether the year is 1900, 1950 or now. Amrita.
Very nice, Amrita. I love your email. But yeah, give up is not in our dictionary, which is, I think anyone who's in news for journalism and not as PR is optimistic, because otherwise you wouldn't do it. So we're all optimists here, no matter how we may seem or appear. But yeah, we are, I'd say, jaded optimists, but optimists nevertheless. So you can mail us, podcast@Newslaundry. Do keep it under 150 words. We'll fix that glitch on our form. And thank you all for your support. Thank you so much for everything. Let's go around and get the recommendations for the week. And I have a wonderful song which is on the theme of what Joy spoke about, but after the recommendations, we'll come to that. You want to go first, Jayashree?
Yeah. First, our recommendation is a very long piece by Owen Jones. This is on the BBC's biased coverage of Israel. It's based on interviews with 13 BBC employees. And so if listeners don't know this yet, basically the Middle East desk head of the BBC, his name is Rafi Berg. He's a former employee of the CIA propaganda unit. He was also a collaborator on a book with Mossad. And I mean, he's admitted to this. It's not like these are allegations. These are truths. And his entire job now, according to the employees that Owen Jones spoke to, is to water down criticism of Israel, the way he sort of rephrases headlines and, whatever. So I think it's quite an interesting read, especially if you've been noticing the direction of coverage of Israel. It's called The BBC's Civil War Over Gaza. Then also because I've been recommending so many heavy things, I'm recommending this delightful series of novels. It's by Ellie Griffiths. It's called the Ruth Galloway series. It's about a forensic archaeologist who lives in a remote seaside village in Norfolk. It's a contemporary murder mystery series, but rooted in archaeology and academia and good old-fashioned police work and local mythology. So it's 15 books in total. They are great fun. I was so sad when it ended. Finally, this is a lovely essay I edited about 11 years ago. It's by Shweta Upadhyay. It's on Amitava Kumar's book, A Matter of Rats, a short biography of Patna. So it's on how he uses rats as an allegory for the woes and stereotypes of Bihar. It's on his ties to Bihar, his feelings for his home state, his subversion of these stereotypes. It's a lovely essay. I mean, it's a great book as well, but if you don't get around to reading it, you can read this essay first. So,
right, thank
lovely.
you, Manisha.
I have a very optimistic essay for everyone from the New Yorker.
Trying to overcompensate.
It's
also
about losing friends.
So it's
a long essay on how friendships break and the curse of friendship.
The curse of friendship.
Oh no, the wonder and the curse of friendship is a choice. That's the blurb. But basically, too many people talk about how friends are very important, but this essay also looks at why friendships break, when do they break, how they become strained as you age. So
Does it say it's okay if you lose friendship?
Yeah. It talks
that's
about
good.
circumstances under which you lose friends. Marriage is one of the big reasons, apparently. Friends not liking each other's spouses. But yeah, it's an interesting read. It's a happy reading. So this, and then I watched The Substance, which is a very gory, scary film. But you should watch it. It's very nice. Demi Moore is just stunning.
It's on Amazon.
Yeah. So watch that. It's really well done.
Even Rajshri was telling me about that on Awful and Awesome.
It's
My problem is I really struggle with body horror. Like, it's just, I find it very difficult to watch.
That's
I think because
exactly the
whenever
word for it. It is body horror. It's just but it's very, very, very sharply told. So
Okay, my recommendation is a very interesting podcast if you like economic podcasts, which I love. It's called The Potato-Shaped Loophole in Free Trade. It talks about when free trade agreements are signed, like the one between Canada, Mexico, and the US, how there's certain products and the certain lobbies can completely violate those agreements because there is one loophole to do with if there is any, bacteria or virus. If I import XYZ product, a certain virus will come with that. And how this particular potato that is grown in America was kind of just stonewalled in Mexico on that basis. And through that, they're telling the story of free trade agreements and the kind of loopholes that exist so you can violate them. I just found it interesting out of the many things. I saw a few films and series. Although, I'll discuss that on Awful and Awesome. I watched the first 2 episodes. They had a screening of Black Warrant based on Sunil Gupta and Sunetra Chaudhary's book, which is co-produced by Josie Joseph's Confluence Media, which will be, I think it's up on Netflix already. But yeah, more on that on Awful and Awesome.
you can watch the interview with Sunil that you had conducted.
Yeah, you can watch that. In fact, Sunil met me at the screening and he was like,
He's a jailer in Tihar for context.
He said it was just such a wonderful interview you did. And, when you were talking to me, it was just such a casual and genuine environment that I started crying when I spoke about Afzal Guru's hanging. And the problem was after that, every studio I went to, they expected me to cry. I said, okay, I'm sorry about that. But on that note, thank you to our producers, Prashant and Priyali. Thank you to our sound recordist, Anil. Thank you, Manisha. And thank you, Jayashree.
Thank you.
I know this is not the sentiment Joyojeet had in mind, but since we're talking about reflecting and old letters that Amitav spoke about and survival, I'll leave you with a song that was the anthem, at least back in the 90s. On the dance floor, the moment the song came out, I Will Survive. Every man, woman and child got on the dance floor with feeling. At first I was afraid. I was petrified. Kept thinking I could never live without you by my side. But then I spent so many nights just thinking how you did me wrong. And I grew strong. And I learned how to get along. And so you're back from outer space. I just walked in to find you here without that look on your face. I should have changed that stupid lock. I should have made you leave your key. And I'd known for just 1 second you'd be back to bother me. You're not go. Walk out the door. Just turn around now. Because you're not welcome anymore. Want you the one to try to break me with goodbye. You think I'd crumble. You think I'd lay down and die. No, not I.
My God, this is like the ultimate breakup song, no? This, but also Freedom. George Michael's Freedom.
Dude, but...
Freedom!
No, but this song, okay, that's my recommendation. You should watch an Australian film called Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. Back in the 90s when, drag queens was still not as mainstream as they are today. The guy who plays Agent, who's the agent who tries to kill Neo?
You're talking about Hugo Weaving. He's from The Matrix, Agent Smith.
Agent Smith. He's a drag queen in that. It is such
Hugo Weaving.
Phenomenal film.
How do you jump from I Will Survive to Freedom to this?
Because his song is picturized on him. He's a drag queen. Okay. And it's the best rendition of just the choreography of I Will Survive. Fantastic.
No, but I Will Survive made a big comeback after the 90s because it was featured in the soundtrack of one of the Shrek movies. So even youths, okay, but Shrek was also a while ago, but even youths know it now.
Youths.
So You are still relevant, Abhinandan, with your music
Youths
knowledge.
must know. I mean, I don't think there's any song that can match I Will Survive in terms of a breakup song.
I don't know.
I think there are, yeah.
If you can think of
Empowering breakup
any
song.
breakup songs, do mail us at podcast@newslaundry and we'll talk about it. All right. See you guys. Have a good weekend.